Up next, we've got Cynthia Cardad coming to us. This is a recorded session, by the way. So we've got her coming up with Wishing You a Happy Migration. Migrating ESPs doesn't have to be scary. She's a senior engagement marketing manager over at RV Share. And when the session is done, she's going to join us for some Q&A. All right. So let's get that queued up, shall we? Can I get some reactions in the chat tab? Let's see some love for Cynthia's session coming up right now, y'all. All right, let's get this queued up. Here comes Cynthia.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here. My name is Cynthia Cardad. I have been a part of the email marketing community for 10 years now. I got my start on the agency side, and for the past 7 years have been on the brand side. I've been fortunate enough to have migrated email service providers twice now, once at a global company with over 6 million subscribers, and most recently at RV Share. So today I'm going to be sharing with you my experiences and give you the potions for a magical migration. So here's what you'll learn in today's session: what to expect and common problems when you go through a migration, how to get buy-in for switching your provider, and how to lead a successful migration. So just at a high level, a few things that I want you to keep in mind. There is some good news. So when you sign a contract with a vendor, the good news is you likely won't be alone. So you will typically be assigned an implementation manager who will basically be your right-hand person and is going to be helping you every step of the way. And then also just on average, I've found that it takes roughly 2 to 3 months just for the migration period itself. So this could actually take longer if your subscriber database is larger, or it could take less time if you have a smaller database. So just something to keep in mind. So I've identified 3 potions needed for a magical migration. First up, we will be reviewing the antidote to common problems, and this will help you become more aware of the common problems that arise and to avoid them before they happen. Next up, we'll be looking at the persuasion potion. This potion is going to help get you support and buy-in for your migration. And last but not least, we'll be taking a look at the orientation potion, and this will help give you the steps to success for leading a magical migration. So first up, let's take a look at the antidote to common poisons. A successful migration requires an antidote to 5 common poisons that I've identified. The first one is lack of time. So it's important to keep in mind the amount of time it takes for you to get buy-in, to narrow down your top contenders, to go through a contract and legal process, and then also adding in the process of the migration itself. So I do highly recommend at a minimum 6 months to 8 months of lead time so that you have enough runway to be successful in the migration. Next up, a very common poison is not including an overlap between your providers. So it's pretty common. I do recommend that you include at least a 1 to 2 month overlap between your 2 vendors between each contract, just so that you have enough time to migrate all of your templates and process any unsubscribes during the IP warm-up phase. Next up, another common problem is regrettable renewals. So this is for those of you that might be in a very seasonal business. Maybe you have specific quarters that are busier than others, such as Q4, for example. You just want to avoid having those renewal discussions during that time period, because it's likely that it's just going to be a lot harder to move through those when you're super busy. The next common problem is dev scarcity. So in my experience, you do need at least one dev or IT resource for the migration. So this person will help set up DMARC policies, help with setting up APIs, getting your audience into the tool. And so it's important to have conversations with the appropriate stakeholders to make sure you can get a resource if that's needed. And last but not least, our favorite topic is dreadful deliverability. So during the warm-up process, you will likely be warming up at least one, maybe multiple IP addresses. And when you go through this process, you typically start by sending 50 emails the first day, and then you double up and send until you reach your maximum subscriber database. So just keep that timeline in mind so you can kind of backtrack from your planning session for the migration. And up next, we're going to take a look at the persuasion potion. So, of course, a successful migration requires support and buy-in, but how do you get that? So I have a few tips to help you here. At a super high level, you want to know your contract end dates. So it's possible that you're in a month-to-month contract, which is ideal. But in both of my cases, you might be in a multi-year contract. So you want to keep those dates in mind and kind of work backwards from there when it comes to planning the migration. Next up, if you haven't done this already, I definitely recommend you start documenting your pain points. Typically, when you get to the conclusion that you're looking to migrate to a new provider, it's likely that you've experienced some pain points. So if you haven't already started documenting those, I do recommend that. It makes it easier to share with your immediate leadership team. And it'll also come in handy later on in the migration process, which I'll get to that in a minute. And last but not least is, of course, understanding just kind of a high level of pricing. If you can speak to your leadership team about saving the company money with this migration, you will absolutely get the support and buy-in that you need. So just at a high level, understand pricing. And up next, we're going to take a look at the orientation potion. And I've identified 7 ingredients needed to lead a successful migration. So first up, you want to identify your stakeholders. So these can be anyone from the end users, anyone who's really going to be supporting you throughout the migration process. The end users, dev resources, product, IT, for example. Of course, your leadership team needs to be aware, as well as your legal and finance team. So it's important to get them all together and informed and make sure they're aware of the process. Next up, after you've identified your stakeholders, you're going to want to create a goal so that you can rally your team around this. And I do recommend keeping all of this documented in your company intranet or whatever you use to keep your processes and documentations in a secure location. Here's an example of what this goal might look like for you. We are looking to find a tool that replaces X, solves current pain points, helps improve customer relationships and company profitability. So next up, after you have your stakeholders informed and you're rallied around a goal, you're going to want to start documenting your must-haves for your next provider. So as I mentioned earlier, if you've already documented your pain points, this is going to be a lot easier when it comes time to documenting your must-haves. So a few examples of this could be maybe you want to focus on lowering your costs. Maybe you want to have an easier connection to internal data sources, easier to use API, for example. Maybe you want some kind of dedicated account team or 24/7 customer support that you're not getting today. And of course, reporting and optimization features. If you have specific reporting features that you're using today, you want to make sure that you can get parity or, potentially even better features with the next tool. Innovation is also a big one. Maybe you're looking for a tool that can provide you things that you don't have access today and make your life significantly easier. And then you also might want to take a look at what type of integrations they have. Can this new tool easily integrate with your current marketing tech stack? If they can and they integrate directly, that makes it significantly easier down the road. And then up next, after you've narrowed down your must-haves, then it makes it easier to decide on who you want to make as your top contenders when you go through the demo process. So this is the step where you need to start narrowing down your choices. There's going to be hundreds to choose from, so it can be a very overwhelming experience. I do recommend narrowing down your choices to 3 to 5 max, especially if you're going to go through a robust demo or RFP process. And the best way to do this is really just to ask around, ask your network, what do they like? What do they dislike? There's also some tools out there such as G2 Crowd or Capterra that can help you narrow down your choices. And up next is the fun part. So once you get to the stage of doing a robust demo, perhaps it's an RFP process, I do recommend creating some type of scoring rubric that you can intersect with your must-haves. So here's an example of what that looks like. You could get a little bit more advanced and make this a weighted scoring, for example. But in my opinion, it really helps keep you aligned and organized and helps to reduce some bias as much as possible. It's also a good way to keep your stakeholders aligned and give them an opportunity to participate as well and score the sections that are important to them. So once you've finally decided on the vendor, then you will go through a contract signing phase. So this is the portion of the migration that can actually take a lot longer than you might expect. So I highly recommend you having those conversations with your legal team as early as possible so you can understand their bandwidth and their processes and kind of work backwards from there. By understanding that will make it significantly easier to get through. And last but not least is the implementation plan. So once your contract starts, as I mentioned, you won't be alone. You will have an implementation manager helping you to stay on track with your migration. So typically they'll help put together a plan and you'll work together with them to get aligned on your specific target dates so that you can stay on track for your migration. So next, I just wanted to share a few results from my migration so you can determine for yourself if it's worth going through the effort. And I am happy to announce that in both of the migrations that I went through, I was able to save a fairly significant amount of money for the organization while simultaneously providing richer experiences, not only for myself and for our customers, other internal stakeholders as well. So just as an example, in my first migration, I helped save the company over $1 million annually. And we also saw 20% lifts in engagement and conversions, thanks to some improved experimentation functionality that we didn't have before. And then in my second migration, I also helped save 40% on cost annually. And we saw conversions improve as well, thanks to innovative features and an improved agility that we didn't have access to before. So just to quickly summarize, you want to be aware of the common problems of a migration before they start. Get buy-in early. This is super important. And last but not least, make a plan for success, and you will be on your way to a magical migration yourself. And with that, I will open it up to questions.
Awesome. Cynthia, thank you so much. Let's get Cynthia in here, guys. Let's get her in here. All right. Here comes Cynthia. Oh wait, no, that's a Christmas song. No, not yet. Gotta wait. Gotta do Halloween first, then we can do Christmas. All right, let's see if she's coming. There she is. What's going on, Cynthia?
Hey, how are y'all?
Good, good. Good to see you.
Yeah,
Please don't laugh at me.
Yeah, we're not quite at Christmas yet. We need to celebrate Halloween first.
Speaking of, let's actually talk about that really quick. I went to Target last night, and I was with my fiance, and we were trying to see if we could buy some Halloween candy. They moved all of the candy into one aisle, and all the Halloween things into one aisle, and all the Christmas things are coming. We haven't even done Christmas. We haven't even done the Halloween yet. So I'm like, guys, so sorry.
Yeah, it gets earlier and earlier every year. You gotta start. You gotta start buying your candy in July. I mean,
yeah. I'm just gonna buy my Christmas tree in July. Forget it. I'll just start. So anyway, back to email camp and nightmare email camp. Awesome. So migrating ESPs. Okay. So one question we got earlier was, can you tell us a bit more about how the warm-up period went for you during the migrations? How'd that go?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it both times mostly went pretty smoothly. The first round, we were warming up multiple brands, and one of our brands was specific to prescription, and like RX. Basically, our brand was RX Saver. And so that one was actually a bit more challenging for us, even though we had a smaller list compared to like our larger brand of Retail Me Not. So we actually did have to do the warm-up process twice because it did not take the first time. So yeah, just something to keep in mind. Like you might not nail your deliverability the first time when you're warming up an IV. So and I think it can just depend on, industries, and we followed all the best practices. We had our deliverability expert helping us, and we eventually got there, but that one was especially challenging. And then after that, it was mostly smooth sailing. Like once you get it, you're good to go.
Gee, no, that warm up, that pesky warm up. But hey, at least you had everyone on deck, ready to go, and everyone collaborated, tried to figure it out. But hey, that's part of the working point. Sometimes things don't always go as planned. So
for sure.
Right. Okay. How about what was your biggest pain point in each of your previous migrations? Was it the same thing, or
like a pain point for the migration itself or the tool?
Either or, yeah.
Let's see. That's a good question. I mean, I think the hardest part, well, I can maybe speak to both of those just in case, but the hardest part in the migration itself for me was definitely the warm-up phase. And I say that because it's lengthy, and in both my cases, because we had an overlap between the vendors, we were still sending emails between both. And so you're also having to, manage unsubscribes between both, and you're essentially duplicating your work. So yeah, it becomes a lot harder. And it's also just depending on your subscriber database, can take, weeks to months, or it could be like really short, just depending like on your list size. So that was definitely the hardest part. In terms of like pain points for tools, I think my biggest pain point is generally around support. So I wanted to make sure that whatever tool we had, like we had really rapid support. It was always like a bad day if I knew I had to call if I had to call the ESP and be like, hey, what's going on? Like,
hey.
yeah, I'm like back again. That was always a bad day. So I wanted to like avoid those days. And luckily with the migrations we did, I think I haven't had to call an ESP in a while. So I'm thankful for that.
It's like a bat phone. ESPs need a bat phone, right? Just a big red bat phone. We can call them up. Hey, I hate to tell you this, but
yeah, they're like saved in my phone at that point.
Yeah.
We can't get an email out. What's going on?
Hey. Oh my gosh. Okay. This kind of tails into what we were just talking about. But Tam wanted to know, should you prune your list before migrating? If so, how?
What can you repeat the question?
It's
Prune
okay.
your list. Yes.
Yeah, should you prune your list before migrating? If so, how?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I had those conversations with our ESP. So I do recommend you kind of chat through that with, whoever you end up going with. It's a good opportunity to prune for sure. If you have people that have been inactive for a really long time, it might make sense. I do recommend, though, maintaining your unsubscriber database because I just think that's so important, just to make sure you don't accidentally resubscribe somebody during the process.
Yeah, because that is not fun.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Moving on here. I like this one a lot. Whitney asked, what is the best way to get buy-in from sales when you are working on migrating both marketing automation and a CRM platform? Ooh. Hey.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, I think you just have to have like really solid benefit points that I think that you could try to speak to with the sales team. If you're changing both tools, what is why are you doing it, and what is it going to support, right? What is that ultimate goal? And I think if you can say it to the sales team, hey, like this is going to increase your agility significantly because you're going to be able to do this automatically, or whatever it is, like as long as you're speaking to what's relevant to the sales team, I think that's going to help them get the buy-in. But that's definitely if you're doing both tools at once, definitely a challenge, but sometimes it makes sense because you might have a marketing automation tool and a CRM provider that work really well together, for example, and maybe in your current process you don't have that.
That makes sense. Actually, and then this one ties into that. Luann wanted to know, could you tell us more about how to develop an Could you tell us more about how to develop an implementation plan? I can say that 5 times fast.
Yeah. So, well, the good news is like I didn't do it myself. Our implementation manager, both times, we basically had this fully documented out. And just because the implementation manager, it's their job, that they do it every day. So they have a very clear view of the steps that you need to take and the order that you need to take them in. And then really your job is just to make sure you execute on it and, update areas where you might need to, maybe there's parts of the implementation that you don't actually need to implement. And so you're really just working with them to rally the teams and making sure everybody's on track with the implementation plan. And you're chatting with the manager about the specific target dates and just making sure you hit those on time.
Nice. All right. Okay, Cynthia, looks like we got time for one more before we gotta let you go, because I know you got a busy day. Julie wanted to know, did you do an audit of your processes to identify what to migrate and what to make more efficient?
I mean, Well, it was like, I feel like for me, well, in both of my cases, it could be unique for everyone, but
Mm-hmm.
the rationale behind the migration was around some specific pain points that we had with our other providers.
Mm-hmm.
They just weren't, we just basically had a hypothesis that there was a better tool out there that could support our needs better. And so essentially we just kind of focused the migration around that point and solving those specific pain points that we wanted to take care of and make sure that, you know, they weren't being repeated when we moved on to the next tool. So really it was just around rallying around those pain points and making sure that whatever tool we move next to solve those problems. And so that's where you kind of do the demo phase and you make sure they solve those problems in those use cases. And you kind of create like specific use cases for the tool, and then they can actually show you where they can solve those problems for you.
Nice. Cool. Perfect. Well, Cynthia, that's all the time we got today for Q&A. I appreciate you coming by, taking time out of your busy day to be here with us and doing your amazing session. Oh man, I hope you have an amazing Halloween come up this weekend. So be safe out there, get lots of candy, or have fun, do all that fun stuff.
You.
So yeah,
Yeah,
awesome.
thank you
Well, thank
so
you so
much.
much.
Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Take care. Have a good one. Bye.